You ever been called useless by someone who once promised to love you forever? That's not a rhetorical question. I mean it. Has someone ever looked you dead in the eye and said, without saying it, that you were a waste of space? A disappointment with a heartbeat? My name's Georgia. I'm 34, married, and apparently barren. That's the word they like to use. Barren. Like a desert. Like a field that refuses to grow anything worthwhile. Like me. Tonight was the monthly family dinner. Daria's idea, of course. Her house, her rules, her wine. She always made sure the tablecloth matched the season, and the wine glasses caught the light just right. She was the kind of woman who smiled with teeth, but never with her eyes. Maybe we should try a new womb, she said, laughing, swirling her Pinot like she was auditioning for a Lifetime movie villain. The table went quiet. Forks paused midair. Mark didn't even flinch, just sipped his wine and kept his eyes on the roast. I stared at her. I didn't say a word. I've learned that silence unsettles people more than shouting ever could. Daria clinked her glass against Alexis's. You're glowing, sweetheart. I swear youth is wasted on the young. Alexis blushed. She always blushes when Daria gives her attention. She used to blush like that around me when we were kids and I let her borrow my favorite sweater or covered for her when she snuck out. That was before she decided she didn't want to be in my shadow anymore. I excused myself after dessert, said I had a migraine. Mark didn't even look up. Back at our house, well, his house, technically, I went to the study. Mark rarely locked anything. He didn't think I had the guts to snoop. He was right, until recently. The drawer beneath the bookshelf squeaked when I pulled it open. Inside, a manila folder, thick, labeled private. I opened it. Fertility clinic forms, blood test results, appointment itineraries. My stomach twisted. They weren't mine. Every document was addressed to A. Harris. Alexis. My hands shook as I flipped through them. Egg retrieval, hormone therapy, IVF consultation, all dated within the last 3 months. I heard the front door open. Mark's voice filtered through the hallway, low and casual. Yeah, she's still clueless, he said, chuckling. I froze. Of course she won't suspect anything. She's been numb for years. I pressed my back against the wall, folder still in hand. She's young, healthy, and more than willing, he continued. Georgia doesn't need to know anything. There was a pause, then a laugh. Daria's. She served her purpose. Now it's time to move on. I stood there, heart pounding, folder clutched to my chest. They thought I didn't know, but I already did know, and I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. Alexis and I were never close. Not really. We were the kind of sisters who smiled for photos and texted on birthdays, but there was always this tightrope between us. I walked it carefully. She stomped on it with heels. Growing up, I was the golden child. Honor roll, scholarships, steady job. She was the wild card, the pretty one, the one who always got away with things because Mom said she's just finding herself. I found myself too, in the background, cleaning up her messes, but I never thought she'd be part of his. The next morning, I sat across from Caitlin at our usual coffee shop. She stirred her latte like she was trying to drill through the table. So let me get this straight, she said. Your husband and your sister are planning a baby together. Behind your back. Technically, behind my uterus, I muttered. She choked on her drink. Jesus, Georgia, I shrugged. I found the paperwork, and I heard them. He said she's more than willing. Caitlin's face darkened. You want to burn it all down? I looked at her. Yes. She nodded slowly. Okay, but revenge has sharp teeth. You sure you want to feed her? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed her the family reunion invite. 2 weeks. Everyone will be there, including Daria's precious donors and photo op friends. Caitlin raised an eyebrow. You're going? I'm not just going, I said. I'm giving the opening toast. Her smile was slow and dangerous. Oh, I like where this is going. I spent the next few days pretending everything was fine. I cooked dinner. I folded his shirts. I even kissed his cheek when he left for work. He didn't notice the difference. He never did. That Friday, I mailed an envelope to Alexis. No return address. Just a single note inside. Don't trust a man with a wife already. Simple. No threats. No drama. Just a little crack in her fantasy. The next day, she showed up at my door. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was in a messy bun, and she was wearing one of those oversized sweaters that swallowed her whole. Hey, she said, voice small. I leaned against the doorframe. Hey, she hesitated. Can we talk? I stepped aside and let her in. She walked to the kitchen and sat at the island, fidgeting with her sleeves. He told me you were okay with it, she said, eyes darting up to mine. That it was your idea. I laughed, short and sharp. Of course he did. I didn't know what to think, she whispered. I mean, he said you didn't want kids, that you were done trying. I crossed my arms. And that made it okay to sleep with him? Her face crumpled. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean to, but you did. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. She looked down. I thought he loved me. I tilted my head. Do you love him? She nodded, barely. I walked over and placed my hands on the counter, leaning in close. Then I hope you're ready to love all of him. The lies, the manipulation, the way he'll turn on you the second you stop being useful. Her lip trembled. You hate me. I don't, I said. But I'm done protecting you. She stood abruptly. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't respond. She left without another word. I watched her walk down the driveway, shoulders hunched, sweater sleeves pulled over her hands like a child. When the door clicked shut behind her, I grabbed my phone. Time to get to work, I texted Caitlin. She replied instantly. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. The trick was pretending I didn't know. At brunch the next weekend, I wore my best fake smile and poured mimosas like I hadn't found a folder full of betrayal tucked in my husband's drawer. Like I hadn't heard my mother-in-law plotting my erasure over speakerphone. Georgia, dear, Daria said, waving me over with her usual air of practiced grace. Can you bring out the scones? Alexis is simply famished. Alexis sat on the sunroom love seat, glowing like a woman in a skincare commercial. Her hand rested lightly on her stomach. 2 months? That's what the clinic notes had said. She was already pregnant. I carried the tray of scones out and set it down in front of them like a good little hostess. Daria smiled tightly. You've always been so helpful. A real team player. Of course, I said, brushing imaginary crumbs off my dress. Family first, right? She laughed, a sharp little sound. Exactly. I caught Rachel's eye from across the room. She raised an eyebrow. I gave her the faintest nod. Rachel was observant. She always had been. Married to Jude, Mark's older brother who distanced himself from the family years ago, she mostly kept quiet at these gatherings. But she watched. She noticed. And I was counting on that. Later, while Darasa was busy showing off Alexis to some of her bridge club friends, I slipped into the downstairs office. She kept everything in neat little folders. Old school, like her. I found what I needed in a drawer labeled Medical Alexis. She didn't even bother hiding it. I snapped pictures of every document, IVF schedules, hormone prescriptions, even a signed consent form for embryo transfer. All of it dated, all of it damning. I was tucking the last paper back when I heard voices in the hallway. Daria and Alexis. I pressed myself against the wall and held my breath. You're doing wonderfully, Daria said in that syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. Just keep following the schedule. No stress. I've been feeling a little sick in the mornings, Alexis said softly. That's normal. It means it's working. You're doing this for the family, sweetheart. For the legacy. There was a pause. And Georgia? Alexis asked. I mean, she's still living in the house. Daria's voice hardened. She won't be for long. Once the baby's here, everything will fall into place. Trust me. My stomach turned. I waited until their footsteps faded, then slipped out the back door and walked around the side of the house like I'd just come in from the garden. Rachel was on the patio, sipping iced tea. She looked up as I approached. "Everything okay?" she asked. I sat beside her. "Do you believe in karma?" She gave a small laugh. "In this family, I believe in survival." I leaned in slightly. "Let's just say things are about to get interesting." She studied me for a beat. "You're not the kind of woman who goes down quietly, are you?" "Not anymore." She nodded, eyes scanning the crowd. "Good." That night, I sat in the guest room with my laptop open and files spread across the bed. I uploaded every photo, every document, every voice memo I'd secretly recorded over the past week. I labeled them by date, added timestamps, and backed them up twice, one on a flash drive, one on a cloud account Caitlin set up for me under a fake name. I stared at one of the photos, Alexis smiling at a sonogram. She looked so proud, so sure. I wanted to scream. Instead, I picked up my phone and texted Caitlin. "She's already pregnant." The typing dots appeared, then disappeared. Then came her reply. "Are you sure you still want to go through with this?" I stared at the screen for a long time before I typed back, "Now more than ever." The next morning, I walked into the kitchen to find Mark pouring coffee like he hadn't shattered our marriage with a syringe and a lie. "Morning," he said, not looking up. "Morning," I echoed, grabbing a mug. He glanced at me. "You look rested." "Yeah," I said, adding cream. "I've been sleeping better lately." He nodded, satisfied. "Good. You'll need your energy for the reunion next weekend. Mom wants you to give the opening toast." I sipped my coffee. "Of course she does." He kissed my cheek and left for work. I watched him go, then opened the kitchen drawer where I'd hidden the flash drive. I ran my thumb over the metal edge. Let them smile. Let them plan. I was done playing the fool. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and money. She was polished, direct, and didn't blink once as I laid it all out. Infidelity, surrogacy, deception, emotional abuse. "So," she said, folding her hands on the desk, "you want to file now?" I looked out the window at the city skyline. "Not yet. I want them to feel it first." She raised a brow. "You're planning something." "I'm finishing something," I said. She nodded slowly. "When you're ready, call me. We'll take him for everything." I left the office feeling lighter, like I'd finally started breathing again. But I wasn't done. Not close. That weekend, I showed up to another family brunch, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. Daria greeted me at the door with her usual air kiss. "You look lovely, Georgia. That dress hides the weight gain nicely." I smiled. "Thanks, Daria. You always know how to make a girl feel special." Inside, the Swansons were gathered like royalty. Mark stood by the fireplace, drink in hand, laughing at something Jude muttered. I hadn't seen Jude in months. He was the black sheep, the brother who'd walked away from the family business and never looked back. But today, he was here, and he noticed me right away. "Long time," he said, coming over. "Too long," I replied. He glanced around, then leaned in. "Why do I feel like you're up to something?" I smiled. "Because I am." He laughed. "I always liked you." Rachel joined us, holding a glass of champagne. "What did I miss?" "George is plotting," Jude said. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Good." We sat in the corner, away from the curated chaos. I told them everything, quietly, carefully, making sure no one else could hear. Jude's jaw tightened. "That's sick." Rachel shook her head. "They're treating you like a placeholder." "Not for long," I said. I'm going to bury their legacy in front of their entire social circle. Jude leaned back. You really want to take down the family? No, I said. I want to take back my life. He nodded. Then hit them where it hurts. Image, reputation, that's all they care about. Already started, I said, pulling out my phone. You know the Swanson Foundation? Yeah, he said. Mom's pride and joy. I found some interesting donations. Shell companies, fake charities. I sent a tip to a journalist last week. Rachel's eyes widened. You serious? I showed them the email confirmation. They're investigating now. Jude let out a low whistle. Damn, Georgia, Rachel grinned. I underestimated you. Most people do, I said. Back at the house that night, Mark was in the den, watching some documentary about legacy building. The irony was thick enough to choke on. I went to the bedroom, opened my laptop, and started organizing everything. Recordings, screenshots, financial records, clinic schedules. I had it all. I added a few more files to the flash drive. Then I made copies. One for Caitlin, one for Rachel, one for the AV guy Daria always hired for the reunion. I wasn't taking any chances. The next evening, Daria called during dinner. Mark answered, put her on speaker like always. They're freezing the accounts, she snapped. The foundation's under investigation. Someone tipped off the media. Mark sat up straighter. What? That's impossible. Nothing's impossible when you let weak people into the family, Daria hissed. We need to control the narrative before the reunion. I kept eating my pasta, like I hadn't just set fire to their kingdom with a single email. Mark hung up and looked at me. You hear that? Yeah, I said, twirling my fork. Sounds like bad luck. He stared at me for a second too long, then went back to his plate. I went to bed early that night, not because I was tired, but because I couldn't stop smiling. Let them scramble. Let them sweat. The toast was coming, and I was just getting started. The Swanson family reunion was always a spectacle. White tents the size of small aircraft hangars, champagne fountains, string quartets, and a guest list that read like a who's who of people who cared too much about last names. I stood in front of the long mirror in the guest room, adjusting the neckline of my navy dress. Not too flashy, not too plain. Just enough to look like I still belonged. Caitlin sat on the bed behind me, watching. You sure about this? I met her eyes in the mirror. It's time. She handed me the flash drive. This is going to explode. Good. I slipped it into my clutch. Let it burn. By the time we arrived, the estate was already swarming. Valets in tuxedos opened doors with practiced smiles. Guests in designer gowns floated across the lawn like they'd never known a real problem in their lives. Daria greeted us at the entrance, flawless as ever in pale gold silk. Georgia, she said, air-kissing both cheeks. You look radiant. You too, I said, smiling sweetly. Hosting suits you. She laughed. Well, someone has to keep the family name shining. Mark appeared beside her, wearing a tailored suit and that smug grin he reserved for public events. Ready for your big moment? He asked. More than you know, I said. Inside the main tent, crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like floating galaxies. Waiters passed hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. A jazz trio played in the corner, and at the front of the room, a massive screen stood behind the podium. Perfect. I mingled. I smiled. I let Daria parade Alexis around like a show pony, her hand resting protectively on her not-so-subtle baby bump. She's glowing, one guest whispered. Carrying the next heir, another replied. I sipped my champagne and waited. When the time came, Daria tapped a fork against her glass. If I could have everyone's attention, she said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife through fondant. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our annual celebration of legacy. And who better to open our evening than the woman who stood beside my son through thick and thin, his beautiful wife, Georgia. Applause. I walked to the podium, heels clicking on the polished floor, heart steady. I didn't bring the speech I'd written. I didn't need it. Thank you, Daria, I said, looking out at the sea of faces. It's been quite a year, and tonight, I want to raise a glass to truth, to legacy, and to the things we pass down, whether we mean to or not. I reached into my clutch, pulled out the flash drive, and turned to the AV tech standing by the screen. Would you mind? He nodded and plugged it in. The screen flickered. Mark shifted in his seat. Daria's smile froze. Then the first video began to play. Daria's voice, clear and sharp. She served her purpose. Now it's time to move on. Gasps, a clip of Mark. She's young, healthy, and more than willing. Georgia doesn't need to know anything. Murmurs rippled through the room. Then screenshots, emails, appointment confirmations, fertility schedules, all with Alexis's name. A voiceover, mine. For those of you wondering, yes, that is my sister. And yes, that is my husband. And yes, this was all done behind my back. Alexis stood frozen, eyes wide, lips trembling. Mark jumped to his feet. Turn it off! I held up a hand. Don't bother. Every guest here received a copy in their inbox this morning. Daria's face was stone. I looked at Alexis. You thought stealing my husband would build you a family? He was never yours to begin with. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mark stormed toward the AV table. Give me that drive. I stepped in front of him. Touch it, and I'll scream. He stopped. I turned back to the room. You all came here to celebrate legacy. Well, here it is. Lies, manipulation, a baby conceived through betrayal. Silence, then whispers, then chairs scraping. People began to leave, avoiding eye contact, muttering about lawsuits and scandal. Daria stood trembling with rage. You ungrateful little... Oh, and one more thing, I said, cutting her off. I turned to Mark. I was never infertile. I just never wanted to have children. With you. He blinked. I walked off the stage, past the stunned faces, past Alexis clutching her stomach, past Daria gripping the back of a chair like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Outside, Caitlin waited by the car. Well? She asked. I exhaled. Done. She handed me a drink from the cooler. To karma. I clinked my cup against hers. To taking back what they tried to steal. And just like that, the empire cracked. The fallout hit before the champagne glasses stopped clinking. The next morning, the Swanson name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Headlines screamed about fraud, deception, and a family legacy built on lies. Someone had leaked the video to a gossip site. Not me. But I wasn't complaining. Mark called 8 times. I didn't answer. Daria sent a single text. You've ruined everything. I smiled and deleted it. By noon, Caitlin and I were sitting on her couch, watching the chaos unfold on her flat screen. A reporter stood outside the Swanson estate, dodging questions from a security guard. Think they're regretting the open bar now? Caitlin asked, passing me a bowl of popcorn. I hope they're choking on it. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Alexis standing on the porch, pale and shaking. Can we talk? She asked. I stepped aside. 5 minutes. She walked in slowly, like someone entering a courtroom. I didn't know he was recording me, she said, sitting on the edge of the couch. I did, I said, sitting across from her. You knew what you were doing. You just didn't think I'd find out. I didn't mean to hurt you. You meant to take what I had. She looked down at her lap. He told me you didn't want kids, that you were cold, that he was trapped. I laughed. He was trapped in a marriage he built, and you believed him because it was easier than facing what you were doing. She looked up, eyes glassy. He said he was going to leave you. Of course he did, I said. That's what men like him do. They promise the world and hand you a grenade. She wiped her eyes. I'm pregnant, Georgia. I know. I don't even know what to do now. That's not my problem anymore. She nodded slowly. I'm sorry. I stood. I hope you raise that baby better than the people who raised us. She left without another word. Later that night, Mark showed up. He banged on the door like he owned the building. I opened it just enough to block him from coming in. You destroyed me, he said, voice low and shaking. No, I said. You did that yourself. I lost my board seat. The foundation's frozen. My name's everywhere. You wanted a legacy, I said. Now all you have is a lesson. He stared at me, jaw clenched. Why would you do this publicly? Because you made me disappear privately. He stepped back like I'd slapped him. I loved you once. No, I said. You loved control. He turned and walked away without another word. The next morning, I met Jude and Rachel at a diner on the edge of town. No cameras, no designer suits, just pancakes and truth. You okay? Rachel asked. Better than I've been in years. Jude slid an envelope across the table. You'll want to see this. Inside were copies of medical records. My records. They forged your test results. Jude said, Mark paid off a clinic to make it look like the infertility was yours. My stomach turned. I always wondered, I said quietly. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You weren't broken. You were lied to. I nodded. Thank you. You pressing charges? Jude asked. No, I said, but I am suing for emotional damages. Rachel smiled. Good. By the end of the week, my lawyer had filed the paperwork. Mark's assets were frozen. The house was in my name now. He could keep the lies. I'd take the rest. I met him one last time at a mediation office downtown. He looked thinner, paler, like the truth had drained the color from his skin. You're really going through with this? He asked. Already did. He leaned forward. You could have just left. I met his eyes. You could have just loved me. He said nothing. The mediator handed me the final agreement. I signed it. No hesitation. I stood, gathered my things, and looked at him one last time. You thought I was weak, I said, but I was just waiting. He looked up, hollow. For what? For the right moment. And then I walked out, never looking back. The empire was in ashes, and I was finally free. The Swanson name didn't just fall, it imploded. Within days, their charity's biggest sponsor pulled out. Daria was dropped from 3 boards. Mark was officially removed from the family trust. And Alexis? She moved back in with our parents, alone and very, very pregnant. I wasn't celebrating, not exactly, but I wasn't crying either. I met Caitlin at the courthouse steps after my final hearing. She handed me a coffee and grinned. You just divorced a man and dismantled a dynasty in the same month. How do you feel? Like I need a nap and a lawyer on retainer. She laughed. You got both. We walked to her car, and I told her what Jude had given me, those forged medical records, the proof that Mark had paid to make me believe I was the problem. He switched the test results, I said, made it look like I was infertile. Caitlin slammed her hand on the dashboard. Are you kidding me? Nope. He had a buddy at the clinic. Paid him off. She stared at me. That's not just cruel. That's criminal. I could press charges, I said, but I won't. Why not? Because I already took what mattered. His name, his power, his reputation. She nodded slowly. You're a better woman than me. Back home, I opened the envelope from Jude again. There was more. Emails between Mark and the clinic, payment receipts, even a voicemail from the doctor confirming the switch. I forwarded everything to my lawyer anyway, just in case. That night, I got a call from Rachel. Hey, she said, I thought you'd want to know. Daria's selling the estate. Seriously? Yep. Word is, She's moving to a condo in Florida, I snorted. From queen of the manor to HOA fees and bingo nights. She's not taking it well. She never did. There was a pause. Georgia, Rachel said, I hope you know you didn't just save yourself. You opened a lot of eyes. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said, thanks. 2 days later, I met Mark one last time. Not in a courtroom or a family gathering, just a quiet coffee shop near the edge of town. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. His suit was wrinkled. His hands shook slightly when he picked up his cup. I wanted to see you, he said. I didn't. He gave a weak smile. Fair. I assume this isn't about the settlement. No, He trailed off, staring at the table. Why'd you do it? Why not just walk away? I leaned back. Because walking away would have let you keep the story. You'd still be the victim. I'd still be the broken wife. He looked up. You wanted revenge? No, I said. I wanted the truth to matter. He rubbed his face. You destroyed everything. No, Mark, you did. I just turned on the lights. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, was any of it real? I looked at him. Really looked. You know what's funny? I said. I spent years thinking I wasn't enough, that I was the problem, that if I just tried harder, loved better, stayed quieter, maybe you'd come back to me. He didn't blink. But I wasn't broken. I was just with the wrong person. He swallowed hard. What about Alexis? What about her? She's having my child. I stood up. Then I hope, for that baby's sake, you finally learn how to be a decent human being. I walked out without looking back. The next morning, my lawyer called. Congratulations, she said. The judge granted full access to the marital assets. The house is yours. The accounts are split, and your emotional damages claim approved. I exhaled. Thank you. You deserve every penny. That afternoon, I packed the last of Mark's things into a box and left it on the curb. I changed the locks. I opened the windows. I lit a candle in the kitchen and let the breeze carry the scent of freedom through every room. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat on the back steps with a glass of wine and watched the sky turn gold. Caitlin texted, You did it. I replied, I survived it. And that somehow felt even better. The kettle whistled just as I hit send on the final chapter. I stood, stretched, and poured the water over my tea bag. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet I used to dread. Now it felt like peace. The manuscript sat open on my laptop. All 286 pages of it. Title, Broken No More. I heard the knock before I saw her through the peephole. Caitlin walked in with a bottle of Prosecco and a greasy paper bag. Celebration breakfast, she said, holding it up. Bagels and bubbles. I grinned. You're a menace. I'm your menace. She popped the cork and poured 2 glasses. So, you finally finished it? I turned the screen toward her. Done. She leaned over, scanned the last paragraph, and shook her head. You really wrote it all down. Every lie, every betrayal, every piece of it. She slid a bagel onto a plate and handed it to me. Think they'll read it? I hope not, I said. But if they do, I hope it hurts. We sat on the couch, legs tucked under us like teenagers during a sleepover. Outside, the city buzzed, but in here, it was just us, 2 women who'd survived more than most people knew. Caitlin raised her glass. To taking your power back. I clinked mine against hers. To never giving it up again. The doorbell rang again, softer this time. I opened it to find a courier holding a small envelope. Delivery for Georgia. I signed and took it. No return address, just my name in delicate handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. Georgia, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a reply. I just wanted to say thank you for telling the truth, even when it hurt. I see things clearer now. I don't know what kind of mother I'll be, but I know I don't want to be the kind of woman I was. I'm sorry. Alexis. I stared at the paper for a long time, then folded it and placed it in the drawer with the rest of the things I hadn't decided what to do with yet. What was that? Caitlin asked. Closure, I said. She nodded. You gonna write her back? Maybe. We spent the rest of the morning eating bagels and picking out cover designs on a publishing site. I chose a simple one. White background, bold black letters. Clean. Unapologetic. Later, I walked Caitlin to the door. She gave me a long hug. I'm proud of you. Thanks for not letting me disappear. Never an option. After she left, I sat by the window with my tea, watching the sun stretch across the skyline. My phone buzzed. An email. Subject, offer from Harper & Lane Publishing. I opened it, read the first line 3 times. We'd love to publish your memoir. Full advance. National release. Let's talk. I covered my mouth with my hand and laughed. Not a big, dramatic laugh, just a quiet, stunned sound, like something cracking open. I typed a reply. Let's talk. I closed the laptop and stood in the kitchen, staring out at the city I'd once felt so small in. Let them call me broken. I prefer unbreakable,